So you're probably asking yourself, John, why the fancy red shirt? Well, that's because it's the day after Christmas and there's still a few movies I gotta talk about on my naughty list. Yes, folks, it is that time of the year again where I get to count down my worst movies of 2016. This year I saw 70 newly released movies. These are all of those, and there are 10 that I just did not like and remembered all the way up until this point that I wanted to just roast for you all and say to the filmmakers, hey, you guys had a lot of passion making these movies, but, take that passion and I'm sure you can engineer towards something amazing for the next movies that you make. As always, remember, this is my subjective list. You won't hate all these movies. I just hated all these movies. Be sure to let me know what movies you hated in the comment section down below. And let me know what bad movies I missed from this year. I know there were certainly a few. So comment down whether you agree, disagree, and which ones I missed. Have fun doing that. And until then, I'll have fun entertaining you with my worst of the year list, starting off with number 10. Starting off number 10 is Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. This entire movie was either weird improvised humor between Zac Efron and Adam Devine, or it was weird forced comedy between the writers of this movie. I felt uncomfortable watching this entire thing because comedies in 2016 are supposed to be subtle, they're supposed to be kind of smart, they're supposed to have some kind of underlying message. This movie had none of that. It just felt like the same old slosh we get every single year, all completely recycled material, such a talented cast that was just completely wasted, and for that it lands up at number 10. Speaking of waste of a talented cast, at number 9 we've got Huntsman Winter's War. This movie had Thor, Emily Blunt, Charlize Theron, and it was the biggest snooze fest of 2016. This is a movie that I honestly can't even remember much from, besides the fact that I felt like it was wasted potential. I mean, I didn't see the first Cinder, or was it Snow White and the Huntsman, but when I was watching this entire thing, the action sequences weren't that exciting. The entire thing just felt like the talented cast was phoning it in to get a paycheck, and it felt like a lot of hardcore fairy tale fans might enjoy it, but since me and the majority of America aren't hardcore fairy tale fans, just wind up being tired throughout the entire thing. Moving on to 8, and speaking of tired, we got a movie that made me physically tired, and that was The Fifth Wave. I was the only person in my entire theater to see this movie, and it had literally everything you've come to expect from young adult movies. It had a female heroine who falls for a, sexy guy with a six-pack in the woods, who winds up carrying a gun, who winds up having to make some hard moral choice by the end of the movie. It takes everything from Divergent, Maze Runner, way back when with Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, all of it, puts into a blender and spews out the worst possible young adult movie you could possibly ask for. This felt like a blatant cash-in for fans of the book. I felt it was something I completely didn't enjoy. You shouldn't have to read a book to enjoy a movie. I felt like this was just complete slosh, recycled material that you'll see every single year and you'll continue to see until this YA trend finally dies. Moving on to number 7, we have, oh hey, another YA movie. It's the Divergent series, Allegiant. Yeah, these Divergent movies get progressively better and worse at the same time, if that's possible. I'll tell you how it's possible. It's because I love how much I hate each new Divergent movie. The first one was on my top 5 worst of the year list the year that came out, and this feels like it's, again, Miles Teller knows he's in a bad movie. Shailene Woodley's trying to hold back laughs from this terrible, terrible, terrible script. It's like they're trying to overthrow the government, but at the same time, they're working for an even eviler government, and they're trying to realize that, like, as the movie goes on, and it's, like, super weird the entire time. I know, Theo James was good in this movie. That should tell you, if Theo James is the best part of this movie, something is wrong, friends. Moving on, though, to number 6, we got, Suicide Squad, because I was one of the first critics to put out a review for this movie, and I'm like, this movie's not that good, and then everyone's like, no, you know nothing, you don't know anything about your life, John, you need to go into a hole and die and suffocate yourself in mud and just get off of YouTube forever, and I'm like, it has a 20-something% on Rotten Tomatoes as of right now, so apparently I'm in the majority in not liking this movie. I still have a ton of dislikes on that video, but moving on past that, this was the weirdest David Ayer music video I've ever seen in my entire life. Sure, Deadshot and Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn were pretty cool, but the entire movie lacked substance. It was complete just flashy style. They were trying so hard to be Guardians of the Galaxy, they forgot to make a good movie. At the end of it, literally, Viola Davis walks out without a scratch on her after this entire city just tumbles down. Not to mention, you've got the weird, mummy, dance, walk like an Egyptian type of thing going on with the villain in this movie. Everything in this thing felt completely weak. There was no support for this movie to stand on whatsoever. No compelling characters. If there were any whatsoever, they cut away just as soon as you're about to get something interesting. It was a movie that frustrated me to no end and made me worried for the DC Cinematic Universe going forward. At number 5, we got Independence Day Resurgence, though. This one was when the weird Siri orb shows up, it's like, hello, I have all the answers. I'm like, are you kidding? This is a weird plot point. All the actors from the original one, Independence Day coming back, were completely phoning it in. I felt embarrassed for anybody who was in this movie. And like I said, the weird Siri orb was such a plot device, just to give all the answers, just to completely straighten this thing out and put it back on course, which it was already way derailed by the point that thing shows up. The entire thing felt like a complete mess. The visual effects were fine, but when you don't have a cool story or like actors putting an effort to the whole thing, it feels like a waste of a movie, and this felt like a waste of a movie. It now detracts from the original, if you're asking me. Speaking of detracting from the original, at number 4, we've got Now You See Me Too. Man, I loved the first Now You See Me because it was clever, it was smart, all the twists made sense. At the end, you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. For this entire movie, you have to take your belief and throw it out the plane window, friends, because when they lead the bad guys onto a plane, and then they get thrown out of the plane, and you're like, oh wait, they're not actually in a plane. They're in a plane docked in the River Thames, so they're not actually gonna die if they're thrown. Okay, if you guys don't get that, that's how I felt when I was watching Now You See Me Too, because the entire thing was just so bizarre the entire way through. They're asking you to add 1 and 1 and get fish somehow, and you're like, huh, this movie makes no sense. I feel stupider for watching it. The entire thing, they're doing a Now You See Me 3, and I honestly can't wait to go in and see that, and I hope it's not worse than this one. Is that even possible? This one was so bad, guys. So bad. And I still remember the horror to this day. Speaking of bad movies, though, in the horror, moving on to number 3, we got the Purge election year. Yeah, man, you got a little girl wanting her candy, so she's gonna go in and completely kill an entire convenience store to get it. You know, the night of the Purge was a cool idea. At this point, when they're trying to kill, like, U.S. senators for no reason besides, like, an agenda of wanting to kill them. Yeah, that lands you at number 3 on the list. It's a movie that was completely useless all the way through. You had like 1 or 2 good performances, but in a script that was so stupid, wasn't visually appealing, and just felt like it went on way too long. Yeah, number 3 on the list. I hated this movie. This is one of my biggest rants of the year. Some of you guys might have thought this was going to be number 1 or 2. Nah, there were 2 that struck early on in the year. Moving on to number 2 was probably the most critically well-received movie on this list that I actually hated. That was Hail Caesar. When I saw this movie, I was so disappointed because the entire thing was pitched as this, like, you know, George Clooney gets kidnapped, what are we going to do to get him back type thing in 50s Hollywood. Like, that sounds so cool. When actually just Josh Brolin checking out the sets of these different movies, none of which are interesting, and all of which just put you to sleep. They have young Han Solo in this movie. He was the best part of the entire movie, the one scene he was in. They have a bunch of priests talking about religion and how their religions don't really work together, and you're like, wow, that's kind of representative of the entire movie. None of it makes sense when it's all put together, just a bunch of, like, little standalone, like, little movies put into, like, one overall movie that really has no premise working towards it. Channing Tatum was working for Communist Soviet Union. He gets into a submarine at the end and sinks into the depths of the ocean. So, you know, that was like me sinking to the depths of my hate for this movie. But here we are, the number 1 worst movie of 2016. It's funny, right? Because it was the first movie I saw all year. Yeah, we got The Forest. This movie was not what a horror movie is supposed to be in 2016. We saw great horror movies all year. They were psychological, they were thrilling, they made, like, the hair on the back of your neck stand up a little bit. This movie was terrible. When there was a jump scare coming, I would literally say, jump scare. And then there would be a jump scare on screen. It's like, oh man. And then the girl would wake up from a dream or something like that. The jump scare wasn't even real. It had no point to it. This entire movie felt like it was constructed on a backbone of sand. It felt like a sandcastle the entire way through. How, like, when you put nothing at the bottom, there's going to be nothing at the top. It's all going to just crumble down before you. The movie wasn't scary. It wasn't thrilling. Natalie Dormer was a great actress. She was horrible in this movie. It was something that was trying to be so sophisticated, go for such an upper class, just like, you know, think about it type movie, and it failed so epically. But now I'm done talking about it, and those are the top 10 worst movies I saw in 2016. As always, be sure to let me know what your picks for the worst of the year are, and if you agree with any of mine. You guys can also go over to mymoviethoughts.com if you want to see some more posts from me, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for tons more posts from me as well. You guys can also comment on this video, share it around with some friends, like it, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching.